The elevator doors slammed shut behind me just as I stumbled inside, breathless. My heart pounded in my chest, my hands gripping the strap of my worn-out bag as I let out a sharp exhale. I had made it.
Barely.
Then I noticed him. The man standing beside me. Tall, poised, ridiculously handsome, the kind of man who belonged to a different world than mine. His crisp black suit was perfectly tailored, his watch gleaming under the fluorescent light. He had an aura of effortless confidence, a quiet power that made the air feel heavier around him. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of my faded jeans, my scuffed sneakers, and the cheap thrift store blouse that barely held together at the seams. He didn't even look at me. I exhaled and pressed the button for my floor. Just as the elevator jerked into motion, the light above us flickered. Then, a loud screech. The floor lurched beneath me. A jolt. A grinding noise. A metallic groan. Then darkness. A chilling silence fell over us, broken only by the sharp inhale I didn't realize I had let out.
Panic seized my chest. No, not now.
The air in the elevator suddenly felt suffocating. The walls closed in. I needed to get out. Then his voice.
Deep.
Controlled. Unbothered. "Well, this is fantastic," he muttered. I turned my head sharply. "Fantastic," I hissed. "We're stuck in an elevator, in complete darkness, with no idea when help is coming. How is that fantastic?" I heard the smirk in his voice before I saw it. Because my day couldn't possibly get any worse. I bit my lip to hold back my frustration.
Great.
A man who thinks he's too important to be stuck in an elevator. But before I could snap back, something changed. The emergency light flickered on, casting an eerie glow over us. That's when I saw his face clearly for the first time. And I realized I knew him. Or rather, I knew of him. His face was splashed across news articles, business magazines, and headlines. Julian Carter. Billionaire. Ruthless CEO. The man who crushed businesses and didn't think twice. And here I was.
Trapped.
With him. The realization hit me like a freight train. Julian Carter. The same man who, just months ago, shut down the company I used to work for. The same man who didn't bat an eye when hundreds of people, including me, lost their jobs overnight. And now we were stuck in the same elevator. My fingers curled into a tight fist. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him what he had done to people like me. But instead, I forced myself to breathe. Because, right now, anger wouldn't get me out of here. Instead, I focused on the control panel, pressing every button in desperation. Nothing. Julian exhaled sharply and ran a hand through his perfect hair. "Looks like we'll be here for a while." I shot him a glare. "You don't seem very concerned." His blue eyes flicked to mine.
Calm.
Unbothered. Because panicking won't change anything. I gritted my teeth. "Easy for you to say. You probably have people waiting on you, someone who will send a rescue team within minutes." His expression didn't change. But there was something in his eyes. Something unreadable. "No one's coming for me," he said. I frowned. "What?" Before I could ask, he spoke again. "But you," he said, studying me. "You seemed in a hurry before we got stuck. Someone waiting for you." My stomach twisted. "Oliver. My son." I clenched my jaw. "Yes." His gaze sharpened. "Who?" I hesitated. Then, against my better judgment, I whispered, "My son." For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Something almost human. A long silence stretched between us. Then he did something that shocked me. He slid down against the wall and loosened his tie. "Looks like we're going to be here for a while," he murmured. "Might as well get comfortable." I hesitated, then slowly lowered myself down across from him. And for the first time, I saw something in Julian Carter that I hadn't expected. A crack in his mask. Minutes turned into an hour. The silence stretched. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I couldn't afford to be here. The late pickup fees. The worried look on Oliver's face when I didn't show up on time. I needed to get out. Julian watched me carefully. "You're anxious." I scoffed. "Of course I am. You think I can afford to be stuck here?" His gaze darkened. "Neither can I." Something about the way he said it made me pause.
Why?
I shook my head. I didn't care. This man was the reason I lost my job. The reason I had to scrape by just to keep my son fed. I wasn't about to pity him. Instead, I turned to him, crossing my arms. Tell me something, I said. Do you even remember shutting down Leighton Industries? Julian's expression didn't change, but he didn't deny it. My blood boiled. Hundreds of people lost their jobs overnight. People with families. People like me. Finally, he sighed. It wasn't personal. I let out a bitter laugh. Not personal? It was personal to us. He held my gaze. Unflinching. Cold. But there was something beneath the surface. Then he leaned forward slightly. If it makes a difference, I regret it. I froze. Had I heard that right? Julian Carter. The man who didn't care about anything but money. The man who crushed businesses without a second thought. Regret? I swallowed hard. Why? His jaw clenched. Because not everything is as simple as it seems.
I didn't know what that meant.
And before I could ask, the elevator shuddered violently. The air grew colder. The lights flickered. Then the emergency speaker crackled. We're working on getting you both out, a voice echoed. Just hold tight. Relief flooded my chest. But before I could react, Julian spoke. When those doors open, he murmured, you're going to hate me even more. A chill ran down my spine. What does that mean? I whispered. He met my gaze. Unblinking. Cold.
Dark.
And then he said something that changed everything. I'm the reason you're stuck in this life. My stomach dropped. The doors groaned. Light flooded in. And everything I thought I knew was about to change. The moment the elevator doors groaned open, cold air rushed in. Bright lights from the lobby flooded the confined space, momentarily blinding me. And then everything changed. A group of security personnel stood outside, their gazes locked onto Julian. But it wasn't just them. Standing there, waiting for him, was a man in a sharp suit, his expression a mix of anger and relief. Mr. Carter, the man exhaled. We've been looking for you. Julian barely acknowledged him, his focus still on me. I felt frozen. My legs were trembling, my breath uneven. The weight of his last words still echoed in my ears. I'm the reason you're stuck in this life. What did that mean? I wanted to ask, but my phone vibrated violently in my pocket, yanking me back to reality. Oliver. I gasped, scrambling to check the time. I was late. Without another word, I bolted past Julian, past the security, past everything. I needed to get to my son. The taxi ride felt endless. My hands shook as I clutched my bag, every worst-case scenario flashing in my mind. Oliver had never been left waiting this long. When I finally reached the daycare, my heart nearly stopped. The lights were dimmed. The front door was locked. I pounded on it. Hello. Please, is anyone still here? After what felt like an eternity, a woman appeared from inside. Ms. Walker, Oliver's daycare teacher. Her face softened when she saw me. You're late, she sighed, unlocking the door. Oliver was scared. We tried calling, but... I rushed in, scanning the room. Then I saw him, curled up in a tiny chair, fast asleep with dried tears on his cheeks. My heart shattered. I ran to him, scooping him into my arms, feeling his tiny body tremble. Mommy's here, baby. I'm so sorry. He stirred, blinking up at me. Mommy? His little voice was hoarse. Tears pricked my eyes. Yes, baby. I'm here. Ms. Walker placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Are you okay, Claire? I swallowed hard.
No.
I wasn't. Because deep inside I knew Julian Carter was tied to this mess somehow. And I needed to find out why. I didn't expect to see Julian again. But when I walked out of the daycare, my body still trembling, a sleek black car was parked at the curb. And leaning against it was him, Julian Carter. His piercing blue eyes found mine. Get in. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed no. But I needed answers. I tightened my grip on Oliver and took a deep breath. I'm not going anywhere with you. His jaw flexed. Then let me take you home. It's late. Oliver looks exhausted. I stiffened. You don't get to say his name. A flicker of something, regret, crossed his face. Claire, I need to explain. I wanted to refuse. But Oliver whimpered in my arms, his tiny fingers clutching at my shirt. He was too tired to walk. Against my better judgment, I exhaled sharply and climbed into the car. The ride was silent, thick with tension. Then Julian finally spoke. You used to work for Leighton Industries. I clenched my fists. Yes. He exhaled. I shut it down. My breath hitched. I knew that. But hearing it from his lips? It felt like a punch to the gut. My voice was hoarse. Why? Julian's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Because Leighton Industries was embezzling money. I had no choice. My heart pounded. So, you destroyed innocent people's lives in the process? His jaw clenched. I did what I had to do. I turned to face him, my voice raw with emotion. Well, congratulations, Mr. Carter. Because of you, I lost everything. Silence. Then he whispered, I know. Something inside me shattered, because deep down I saw it in his eyes. He regretted it. Julian parked outside my tiny apartment complex. I climbed out, cradling Oliver, my chest aching. I was done with this conversation. But before I could walk away, he called out, I want to help. I froze. Slowly, I turned back. What? His gaze was steady. You lost everything because of me. Let me fix it. I let out a bitter laugh. Fix it?
How?
Are you going to turn back time? Give me my old job back. His next words left me breathless.
No, he said.
I'm offering you a new one. I blinked. What? His expression was unreadable. Work for me, Claire. A cold, hollow silence settled between us. I swallowed hard. You want me to work for the man who ruined my life? His lips pressed into a firm line. I want to make things right. I shook my head, my grip on Oliver tightening. I don't trust you. Julian's blue eyes darkened. Then let me earn it. I stared at him. This was insane. But a job meant stability. It meant a future for Oliver. It meant I wouldn't have to struggle anymore. And deep down I saw it. The regret in his eyes. The weight of his guilt. I exhaled shakily. Fine. 1 month. That's all I'd give him. But I had no idea. I was about to step into something far bigger than I ever imagined. I told myself I was only doing this for Oliver. 1 month. That was it. When I stepped into Julian Carter's corporate empire the next morning, my breath caught. It was nothing like my old job. Everything screamed power, glass walls, expensive marble floors, people moving like clockwork in pristine suits. I didn't belong here. A woman in a sleek dress approached me. You must be Claire. Mr. Carter is expecting you. Every muscle in my body tensed. Mr. Carter. I followed her into an office, so large it could fit my entire apartment inside. And there he was, Julian Carter, seated behind an impossibly large desk, looking completely at ease. His sharp blue eyes met mine. Claire. I swallowed hard. What exactly is this job? He leaned back, studying me. You'll be working as my executive assistant. I let out a humorless laugh. So, I went from struggling single mom to coffee fetcher for a billionaire? He didn't flinch. This position pays 6 figures. My breath hitched. 6 figures? That could change everything. Oliver's future. Our survival. But at what cost? I narrowed my eyes. Why me? Something flickered in his expression. Because I trust you. That was the first lie. And I had no idea. I was about to uncover something far darker than I could ever imagine. The first week was unbearable. Julian was cold, efficient, and relentless. He didn't tolerate mistakes. He expected perfection. And yet, there were moments when he softened. Fleeting glances. Brief pauses. Like he wanted to say something but held back. I hated the effect he had on me. One night, after everyone had left, I caught him staring out his office window, lost in thought. You don't sleep much, do you? Asked before I could stop myself. He turned, startled. Then, a small, tired smirk. Neither do you. And just like that, something shifted. The tension between us changed. But I didn't know. I was playing a dangerous game. One evening, I picked up Oliver from daycare, exhausted but hopeful. Then I felt it eyes on me. I turned sharply. A black car was parked across the street. Watching. Waiting. Panic surged through me. Was it one of Julian's enemies? Someone trying to use me as leverage? I held Oliver closer, my breath shaky. I had stepped into Julian's world, and I was no longer safe. The next morning, I stormed into Julian's office. Who's following me? He looked up sharply. What? There was a car watching my apartment.
Do you know something about that?
His jaw clenched. You're under my employment now. That comes with risks. Risks? I repeated. What the hell does that mean? He stood, walking toward me. It means people want to hurt me. And now, they know you work for me. My blood ran cold. So, I'm a target? His gaze darkened. Not if I can help it. And that's when I realized Julian Carter wasn't just a businessman. He had enemies. Dangerous ones. And I had just become part of his world. I should have quit. I should have run. But I didn't. Because deep down I knew Julian was hiding something. And I needed to know the truth. Even if it destroyed me. One night, I found a document left on his desk.
A file.
My old company. The shutdown. The embezzlement scandal. And right there, written in cold ink, Julian Carter had been forced to do it. Someone had blackmailed him. The truth hit me like a freight train. Julian hadn't destroyed my life. He had tried to save it. I confronted him. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. His jaw tightened. Would you have believed me? I swallowed hard. He was right. But then he murmured something that shattered me. I've regretted it every day since. And just like that, I saw him for what he really was. Not a villain. Not a monster. Just a man trying to survive in a world that wanted to destroy him. And I was falling for him. It happened too fast. 1 second, we were arguing. The next, his hands were in my hair, his lips crashing against mine. It was reckless. It was wrong. But God, it felt right. The moment our lips parted, reality crashed back in. I pushed him away, my breath shaky. That shouldn't have happened. Julian's jaw tensed, his hands still lingering at his sides like he was restraining himself. Like he didn't want to let go. I stepped back. I'm your employee. And you. I let out a hollow laugh. You're the reason my life turned upside down. His blue eyes darkened. Claire. But I shook my head and turned to leave. This was a mistake. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. But deep down I knew Julian Carter was already in my veins. I tried to move on. To forget that kiss. But the next morning when I walked into the office, something felt off. People were whispering. Staring at me. And when I reached Julian's office, I saw why. A woman sat behind his desk, legs crossed, watching me like a predator, sizing up its prey. She was beautiful. Ice-cold perfection. And the way she smirked made my skin crawl. Julian's ex. Victoria Kingston. And I knew this woman wasn't here to play nice. Victoria studied me, her eyes gleaming. So, you're the new assistant. Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. I squared my shoulders. That's right. She smirked. Funny. Julian doesn't usually keep his assistants around this long. My jaw clenched. I can handle myself. Her smile didn't waver. But when she stood, stepping closer, her voice dropped to a whisper. You should quit while you still can. A warning. A threat. And I had this sinking feeling Victoria Kingston was about to make my life a living hell. The next few days were brutal. Files went missing. Emails were mysteriously deleted. I found my coffee accidentally spilled on important documents. And every time something went wrong, Victoria was there.
Smiling.
Watching. She wanted me to fail. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I had survived worse. I wasn't about to let some jealous ex ruin me. The final straw came when she humiliated me in front of the entire office. She had arranged a meeting that didn't exist. Sent me to the wrong location. And when I returned, furious, embarrassed, She was there, laughing. Julian walked in just in time to see it. His expression darkened. "What's going on here?" Victoria pouted. "Oh, nothing, darling. Just having a little fun." But Julian's gaze snapped to me. He saw the anger, the humiliation burning in my eyes. And then he did something no one expected. He turned to Victoria. "Get out." Her eyes widened. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said coldly. "You don't belong here anymore." Victoria Kingston had just been publicly humiliated by Julian Carter himself. And as she stormed out, shooting me a murderous glare, I knew this wasn't over. I thought Victoria was gone. I was wrong. That night, I received a message. An anonymous email. Attached was a file. A contract. A contract proving Julian Carter had planned Leighton Industries' downfall all along. My breath hitched.
No.
It couldn't be true. Had he lied to me this whole time? Had I just fallen for the man who ruined my life? I stormed into Julian's penthouse, my hands shaking. He looked up from his desk, surprised. "Claire?" I threw the contract onto the table. "Explain this." His expression darkened. Slowly, he picked up the file. "Read it." Then he looked up. "Where did you get this?" My stomach twisted. "So, it's true?" His jaw clenched. "It's not what you think." I let out a hollow laugh. "Not what I think. Julian, this proves you orchestrated everything. You destroyed my old company. You destroyed my life." Silence. And, in that silence, I got my answer. I felt my heart crack. Tears burned my eyes as I stepped back. "I trusted you, Claire." But I was already gone. I quit the next morning. Walked out without looking back. I wanted to hate him. I needed to hate him. But the pain in my chest wouldn't go away. Because deep down, I still loved him. Losing my job meant one thing. I couldn't afford Oliver's daycare. I struggled for weeks, taking odd jobs, barely scraping by. And then the eviction notice came. I stared at the paper, my hands shaking. We were going to be homeless. And I had no one to turn to. No one except him. I didn't want to do it. But I had no choice. I showed up at Julian's office, my pride shattered. "I need a loan." His blue eyes locked onto mine.
No.
My breath hitched. "What?" He leaned forward. "You don't need a loan. You need a job. Come back." I swallowed hard. "I can't."
His voice softened.
"Claire, I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to believe him. But could I?" I returned to work. But this time, things were different. I kept my guard up.
Kept my distance.
And Julian? He tried everything to fix what he had broken. But trust wasn't something he could buy. He had to earn it. Just when I thought things were getting better, Victoria returned. She had been working with Julian's enemies all along. And now, she had one goal. Destroy him. Victoria leaked confidential files. Staged a scandal. Julian's company crumbled overnight. And just like that, he was ruined. I should have walked away. But I couldn't. Because despite everything, I still loved him. When Julian lost everything, I saw the truth. He was just a man. Not invincible. Not untouchable. And when he finally let his guard down, when he finally looked at me, not as Julian Carter, billionaire, but as a man who had lost everything, I forgave him. Not because he deserved it, but because I couldn't love him and hate him at the same time. Julian rebuilt his empire. And this time he did it the right way. Together. With me. Because despite everything, despite the pain, despite the betrayal, he had changed. And for the first time in my life, so had I.